Hi, I'm Lois Haggard from the New Mexico Department of Health. This is part 3 of the training video series for developing an IBIS Query Module. We're going to look at the ibisq.cfg or config file. The config file is located in the ibisq backend folder on the ibisq server. I have my Q drive on my computer mapped to the ibisq folder on the server. And in that ibisq folder is a Q modules directory, and in there we'll find the Statepop folder, and that's where we want to look for in the Statepop folder for this .cfg file. At the top of the CFG file are a few lines that are pretty simple once you know what they are. Home path is the path to the folder where the config file is located. Now notice that this is the E drive. This is because it's the E drive on the ibisq server. My computer has a Q drive that is mapped to that ibisq folder on the server. But from the server's point of view, that ibisq folder is on the server's E drive. So it's in E:ibisq Q module Statepop. That's where the config file is located. This work path is just a folder that's also in the ibisq folder. That's where your SAS temporary files get written. And you'll want to go in there and clean those out every once in a while. If SAS doesn't shut down gracefully, it'll leave a file in there. This next line is the SAS path. This is the path to the data file for the Statepop Query Module. And this is again from the perspective of the server. It's in the ibisq SAS data final folder, and the name of the data set is Statepop 00_06. Now this SAS path and SAS data are for the numerator data set. SASPOP and SASPOP data are for the denominator data set. Well, this is a population data set, and we're just querying it to sum up counts. So it is our numerator data set in this case, even though it is a population data set. And we don't have a population data set, so I've commented these rows out with a hash sign. The next line, SAS bin, is the path to the SAS program. So ibisq submits a program to SAS, and it does it on the command line, and it needs to know where the SAS executable file is located. Next, we have some lines in the config file that I'm just going to tell you not to worry about right now. These two lines are the same for every config file, and these are more advanced topics than what we have time to cover in this video. My advice to you is just leave them alone. This is all the rest of the config file. There are some instructions up here, and then these 3 lines are the lines that are most important. I call this the crosswalk because it is a crosswalk from the SAS data set to the dimension in the front end IBIS and to the population data set. And this crosswalk area down here has a comment that helps you remember what these values are. Also, one thing about this file that is very, very, very important to remember is that it is space delimited. So every field in this file must have one space between it and the next field, or the next value. It can't have 2 spaces. It can't have a tab. It has one space. That's how ibisq reads this file. Okay, so for this crosswalk area down here, the first field is a value. It's a numeric value. These used to be used by ibisq in an older version, but they're not. The actual value isn't important anymore, but it still looks for a value in this first field. It can be any value. The next field is the name of the numerator variable in the SAS dataset. So our variable names were year, state, county, and I think it was pop count. Pop count isn't in this dataset. These are just the dimension variables. We'll deal with pop count in another query backend file. So this is the SAS dataset numerator variable name. This is the dimension name in the IBIS view dimension XML file. This is the value that's in the name element. Not the name of the file, the value in that file in the name element. The next field here is the name of the variable in the SAS denominator dataset. We don't have a denominator dataset in this case. This next field is a label. It can be anything. You just can't leave it out. This type 1 variable has two possible values, and this is where the instructions up here come into play. For type 1, the two variables are NUM for a numeric variable or CHAR for a character variable. The next field is called type 2, and these are the codes for type 2, and all of these are categorical variables. These other types are for more advanced topics, and we'll get into those in other videos. Finally, the last field in this data variable crosswalk is the length field. This is the SAS length, so it's the number of bytes, I guess it is, required to store the SAS variable. We just put a default of 8. You know, storage isn't a big deal anymore. If this were a character variable, it would have to be the maximum length that the character variable could assume, that the variable value could assume. And that's it. That's our config file in a nutshell. This is the end of developing an IBIS Query Module Part 3, the Statepop Dataset config file.